Hello, I'm Psycat Cosplay and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a little bit different than my other content. Today I'm going to be talking about cosplay and conventions in the era of COVID. In particular, I've seen a lot of people asking questions about when will cons be back, or when is it going to be safe to go to cons again? And I'm hoping that today's video is going to help shed a little light for some people and give you some more information on what's going on, why it may not be a good idea to go to cons for a while, and what we can do to help them come back faster. So for those of you who don't know, I actually have a bachelor's in biochemistry and a PhD in biology. I am not a medical professional and I'm not an epidemiologist. However, I am a trained microbiologist, biochemist, and biophysicist. So I have a little bit of a background that helps me to better understand the situation at hand, and hopefully with my background I can better explain some things that are going on and hopefully help you understand why you probably shouldn't go to a con for a while. And if you have any additional questions about things that I'm talking about today, I have a number of links down below to some data and information. And also, don't forget, if you have any other questions, please leave a comment down below and I'll try my best to answer them. So, there's a couple of different things that we need to address. One is, when will cons be back? And two, when is it going to be safe to go to conventions? The information that I'm going to be talking about today is going to pretty much only relate to the United States, and that's because the US is kind of a worst case scenario right now. Every place is going to be a little bit different. So the question of when will cons be back is going to be different for different areas. It's going to be different for different areas of the world, and it's going to be different for different areas of the United States. It's going to depend on how quickly the coronavirus spread is contained in your area, the positivity rate in your area, that means the number of people who are testing positive. It's going to depend on a lot of things. Meeting in large groups right now is not a good idea. There haven't been any cons that have run except for two very small events in Florida over the last couple of weeks since early March. And it's looking like there probably will not be any major conventions at least until early to mid 2021. And this is because of safety concerns. Will there be smaller local conventions that run? There might be. However, is it going to be safe? And is it going to look like conventions used to look like? So there's a number of things that we need to address and look at to determine if these things are going to run, if they're going to be safe, and are they going to be like they used to be? Are they going to run? The answer is, who knows? Unfortunately, at this point, the positivity rate, the case numbers, number of people hospitalized is varying widely across the United States. There are currently only a couple of US states that are showing a decline in cases. Currently only about 12 that are showing a steady hold in cases, and 36 or more that are showing an increase in cases currently. What this means is that they probably aren't going to be cons for a while. For most states to reach what is known as stage 4, where they are allowing large gatherings of people and they consider that a safe thing to do, it's going to be a while. And currently there are concerns not only for the current spike in cases, but also another spike later in the fall. When are they going to run again? It's really dependent on what's going on in your locality. Are they going to be safe to go to? That's a very complex question. You have to balance your own personal safety and the safety of the people that you interact with. Say I went to a convention in the past and I caught a cold, or I caught something really nasty. That stinks, and I'm sick. But also, did I spread it to anybody else? Did I get my friends sick? Am I like why everybody around me got con crud? That's something you're going to have to take into account. Not only are you going to need to worry about your own personal safety, but the safety of those around you. And this is my opinion, nobody else's, but in my opinion, the safety of those around you, those you care about, your friends and your family, kind of trumps your own fun. And it's kind of irresponsible to go do something where you might have fun and you get to see friends and it's a great time, but then you bring something back that is going to potentially be very harmful to the people that you care about. When is it going to be safe? Well, that comes down to, do we have a good treatment for coronavirus? And do we have a vaccine for coronavirus? Currently, for SARS-CoV-2, which is the name of the virus, and Covid-19, which is the name of the disease, we do have some potential drugs that can lessen the severity of COVID-19. There is data that shows that remdesivir does lessen the severity and reduce death rates in severely ill people. But what that means is that is a drug that is being used to treat people that already have it and are very seriously ill. We do not currently have a drug treatment if you're just mildly ill. We don't know if remdesivir is useful in patients who only have mild cases. And when I say mild cases, a mild case of coronavirus can mean a very high fever, shortness of breath for weeks. So there aren't any other current drug treatments as far as I am aware. I mean, I'm only one person. I do a lot of research and I read a lot about coronavirus. If you know more than I do, please share. It's very helpful. But that's to my knowledge what we have currently as a treatment. Now, a vaccine, there are over 100 different companies worldwide working on different vaccines for the treatment of coronavirus. That's a lot. And we're going to need basically all the resources that we can get, and all of those companies producing vaccine to help inoculate enough people to prevent the spread of coronavirus. There are a number of companies already moving into phase 3 trials this coming July, which means that there may be a vaccine available as early as late 2020 or early 2021. However, those are just trials. We don't yet know what the data is from those trials because they haven't run yet. So there are a number of companies based in the US and across the globe that are at least in phase 2, if not completing phase 2 and moving into phase 3. And what that means is, in a drug testing regime, you have phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 trials before a drug is approved for use in the general population. A phase 1 trial is a basic safety trial. They give it to a very limited number of people, and hopefully it doesn't kill them. That's phase 1 in a nutshell. Phase 2 is, again, safety information. They're also looking for some other data in a limited number of people, but the sample size is bigger, usually a couple hundred, maybe 50 to 100 or more people. And a phase 3 trial is looking at thousands of people. So Moderna currently is looking for 30,000 people in various testing sites across the globe to get the vaccine and see how it performs. And so they're looking for how well it performs, the efficacy rate of the vaccine, and they're also looking for safety information. They're looking for, is it safe? Does it cause reactions? What those reactions are? And So once they get that data, they submit it to, at least in the US, they submit it to the FDA, and it goes through a pretty rigorous review of the data. A lot of people are a little confused right now about what Operation Warp Speed is, and it's not what you think. Operation Warp Speed is a US program to increase the amount of vaccine that may be available in the future. And it's not speeding up the process. Vaccine manufacturers are going as fast as they can, as safely as they can. What Operation Warp Speed basically is the government has given a lot of money to a number of companies who are developing vaccine candidates. They're just speeding up the process by greasing the wheels. A lot of these vaccines, they require a lot of funds to manufacture. And so the government has tried to speed that up by giving money to these manufacturers. When can we expect a vaccine? That's really dependent on these trials, how the vaccine performs, and how much vaccine is being manufactured. What Operation Warp Speed is doing in part is allowing vaccine manufacturers to do what's called manufacturing at risk, meaning they are already manufacturing vaccine that has not yet made it through to the end of its phase 3 trial. So they're manufacturing millions of doses of vaccine that potentially doesn't work or may not be safe. However, because they are being funded by Operation Warp Speed, they can do this without any major business complications. They're not going to necessarily lose billions of dollars because they are already being funded billions of dollars. So they can make vaccine at the same time it is tested. Usually the vaccine is tested first and then manufactured. However, because of the nature of this crisis, they are doing this manufacturing at risk. So if the vaccine makes it through phase 3 and it's safe and fairly effective, at that point they will already have millions of doses of vaccine to distribute and get into the population as quickly as possible. So that comes to, when can we expect to get a vaccine? Like I said, that's really dependent on what the data are, how the vaccines perform in their phase 3 trials, and how long those phase 3 trials last. Vaccine manufacturers will not knowingly infect people with coronavirus. So what they have to do is inoculate people and wait to see who gets sick, just from people living their lives. However, we do have a number of current coronavirus hotspots, so companies are actually getting people in those hotspots to get vaccinated to hopefully get their phase 3 trial data faster. Currently, with different companies, we're looking at maybe a vaccine available as early as December. That would be amazing. That's best case scenario. Worst case scenario is that these vaccine candidates don't work and we have to start basically from scratch. And again, that means that we would have a vaccine candidate about 12 to 18 months from now, so mid to late 2021. Then there is the question of, how do I get a vaccine? These vaccine manufacturers have to manufacture the vaccine and then distribute the vaccine. Getting everyone in the United States inoculated, or the people that can get inoculated, because there's some people who will not be able to get the vaccine for health reasons, is going to take a while. Vaccines do two things. They help protect you from getting sick, and they help protect others from getting sick via something known as herd immunity. So I've seen a lot of people say, oh, well, when we get enough people sick, we'll get herd immunity and then it'll stop spreading. And that is true. However, to get to a place where it stops spreading, you have to either have about 80 to 90% of people sick or vaccinated, or a combination of both. That's a lot of people. Current estimates are that about 10% of the US population has or has had coronavirus. That's about 25 million people is the current estimate for the number of people who've gotten sick. That's a lot higher than the number of confirmed cases, but there's a lot of asymptomatic spread, about 35–40% of all cases seem to be asymptomatic. And so the current number of people who've gotten sick is probably a lot higher than the confirmed number of cases. What that means is we have to let another 70% of the US population get sick before herd immunity really kicks in. And that's a lot of people. And if 25 million people in the US have already gotten it, and 125,000 people have already passed away from the virus, that's a lot of people who have died, and a lot more people who will die to get to the level of herd immunity that's required for spread to stop. So it's not like we get to 50 or 60% of the population getting coronavirus and then it stops spreading. It's a lot higher than that. So to reach the levels of coverage, meaning enough people have gotten sick or enough people have gotten vaccinated to stop the spread, is about 90% of the population. That's usually what it is for most diseases. So say for measles, to get it to stop spreading, you have to have about 90–95% of people inoculated. And measles, for example, was declared eliminated in the United States in the year 2000. And then vaccination rates dropped. They didn't drop by that much, but they dropped by about 5%, which was enough to allow measles to gain a foothold back into the United States. And now it's back, and a number of people get sick from it every year. So when vaccination rates aren't high enough, herd immunity goes away. How long is it going to take for us to get to herd immunity? Unfortunately, we may never actually get to that level here in the United States. As of yesterday, during a press conference, Dr. Fauci, who is the director of the NIAID, which is the National Institute of Allergies and Infectious Diseases, said that based on polling data of U.S. residents, probably only about 2/3 of all U.S. residents will voluntarily get the coronavirus vaccine. And this is very unfortunate because it will mean that the coronavirus will continue to spread around in the United States. So, vaccines, like I said, they do two things. They prevent you from getting sick, and then they prevent other people from getting sick from herd immunity. That first one, they prevent you from getting sick, is based on how well it works. So some vaccines work really, really well. The measles vaccine is got an efficacy rate of about 98%, meaning for every 98 out of 100 people who have the vaccine, if they get infected with the measles, they don't have symptoms. They don't show any signs of getting the measles because the vaccine works really, really well. Meaning that when you get the vaccine, it creates an antibody response in the body that is very, very strong. And so then if you get infected with the actual virus, that antibody response is so strong that it basically kills the virus before you can get sick and show symptoms. It's a really good vaccine. Right now, what we're hoping for with the coronavirus vaccine is an efficacy rate of about 70–75%, meaning that for every 100 people that are exposed to the virus, the vaccine works really, really well in about 75% of the people, 75 people, and doesn't necessarily prevent about 25 people from getting sick, although it will hopefully make the symptoms not as bad. So the flu vaccine, every year, it varies in how efficacious it is, how effective it is, and usually on a good year it's about 40–60% effective, meaning in 40–60% of all people that get the vaccine, it prevents you from developing symptoms, and in the rest of people who do develop symptoms, it lessens the severity of the disease. So in the case of coronavirus, we're looking at hopefully a vaccine that is about 70–75% effective. Couple that with probably not reaching the levels of herd immunity that we need to prevent coronavirus spread. It's sort of a best worst case scenario. So when we get a vaccine, it is imperative that you get it. These vaccines are going to go through the whole approval process of the FDA. They're not skipping any steps. They've gone through all the trials. they are going to be as safe as they possibly can be. They're not skipping steps. They're not rushing these vaccines through the approval process and skipping steps, because that would be bad. So when a vaccine becomes available, I highly recommend that you get it. However, you're not necessarily going to be able to get it right away. These vaccines are going to go to those at highest risk first, meaning healthcare professionals and people over the age of 55. For people like me who are younger, it may take a while for us to be able to access the vaccine. So it may be a couple months after the vaccine is available for me to be able to get vaccinated. I want to get vaccinated as soon as possible, but I also want those who are at higher risk to be vaccinated as soon as possible as well. So if I need to kind of wait my turn, I will. There are other couple of things with the vaccine in that they are not generally testing it in certain populations. Those under the age of 18, I don't think that anyone is running trials in that age group. And in pregnant populations, meaning women who are pregnant, they are not running trials currently. So those populations will not be able to get vaccinated right away. Meaning if you are under the age of 18 or pregnant or wanting to become pregnant, you may not be able to get vaccinated for a longer period of time. So they are going to eventually run trials in those groups, but they are not doing it currently. So I've kind of rambled on a long time. What does this all mean? So when is it going to be safe to go to cons again? That is unknown. It may be as soon as early 2021. It may be not until the middle or end of 2021, or it may not be until 2022. There's so many unknowns. It's going to take a while for these things to be safe and, sort of back to normal again. So best case scenario, it will be safe to go early, maybe March, April 2021. Probably summer or late 2021, they will be safe, meaning the risk of getting coronavirus will be very low and the risk of spreading coronavirus will be very low. Now, if cons do run before a vaccine is available, what's it going to look like? Well, it's not going to look like what it did in the past. You are probably going to be required to wear a mask. You're probably going to get your temperature checked when you get in there, and when you're moving around, you may encounter different temperature checks. You're probably going to be asked to socially distance, meaning stay 6 feet away from other people. You're probably going to need to wash your hands or sanitize your hands very often. You are probably not going to be able to, hug your friends, hang out for long periods of time. Not really going to be necessarily like a party situation. So the social atmosphere of conventions are probably going to be very different until there is a drug treatment or a vaccine or both. So will you want to go to something like that? What are you going to do about your cosplay? Are you going to be able to wear your cosplay, or are you going to, you're going to need to wear a mask? So what about, how do I do photo shoots? How do I, do group cosplay? It's a really tricky question. And the answer is we don't really know. You may be able to cosplay. Maybe your cosplay has a mask built in. Awesome. But if your cosplay doesn't, you're going to be wearing a mask, and are you going to take your mask off for photos? Are you going to take your mask off for photo shoots? What's the risk? Masks are great. Social distancing is great. They reduce spread, but they don't prevent all spread. So wearing a mask and social distancing helps to reduce the number of cases, but it doesn't prevent all of them. So what that means is even with the best preventative measures, you may still get sick. Will things be like they used to if conventions run? Probably not. They're not going to be the same sort of social fun atmosphere that they used to be. And If you think that you would enjoy something like that, that's great. That's awesome. And doing it as safely as possible, that's up to you. But cons really won't be back to what they used to be until we have a vaccine and a good vaccine coverage rate, meaning enough people have been vaccinated. So, how dangerous is coronavirus really? That's a very difficult and kind of complex question to answer. And the best thing to kind of do is compare it to other viral diseases. So, for example, polio. Polio was a disease that was pretty feared for a very long period of time until we managed to get rid of it here in the United States via vaccine. Up until we had a vaccine for it in the 1960s, every year, there'd be outbreaks in different places. And while polio was pretty contagious, it wasn't very deadly. It didn't kill all that often. But it was widely feared because of the complications that come from polio. So you might be familiar with people who are paralyzed or have other complications from getting polio. I had a great uncle who was paralyzed as a child, and he was in a wheelchair for the rest of his life because he contracted polio as a child and then was paralyzed from the waist down. These diseases, like polio, don't necessarily kill a lot of people, but they do create a lot of complications, meaning there are hundreds of thousands to millions of people who are permanently disabled, permanently sick, or chronically ill because of the disease that they contracted. So, with coronavirus, the case fatality rate, or CFR, when we first saw this disease emerge, we thought that it was about 3%, meaning that if you get it, about 3% of people die, which is really, really high compared to, say, the flu, which has a CFR of 0.1%. Right now, current estimates are that it's a little bit lower than 3%. It's about 1%, which is still 10 times more deadly than the flu. However, you have to take into account, like with polio, those people who are going to be permanently disabled, chronically ill because of COVID. We don't know the long-term effects of a COVID-19 disease. There may be lots of people who end up with chronic lung problems, maybe people who need lung transplants. There have actually been one already here in the United States. People who have other chronic illness because of COVID. So you have to not only look at how many people unfortunately have passed away from COVID, but how many people may end up with chronic health issues because of getting infected. So not only do we look at, the death rate, but also the other people who survive, but may not be healthy after getting infected. So how bad is this? It's bad. Not only are a lot of people unfortunately losing their lives, but there may be a lot of people who are being left chronically ill by getting COVID-19. So, wear a mask, wash your hands, stay socially distant, and we will get through this. It will end. Cons will come back, but it may be a bit. Thanks for watching. Maybe this was helpful. I hope. And if you like my videos, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I will see you guys in the next one.